Ryan had always lived a quiet, peaceful life on the small colony of Haven, a place far from the busy cities of Earth. It was a simple existence. Just him, a small workshop filled with tools, and the endless stars above. He spent most of his days fixing machines, tinkering with gadgets, and living in solitude. Sometimes, he would look out at the stars and wonder if there was something more waiting for him out there, but he always pushed the thought aside. Life on Haven was comfortable enough. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow across the sky, Ryan was in his workshop, making repairs to an old spaceship engine. The sound of clanging metal echoed in the stillness. He barely noticed when the light in the sky grew brighter. At first, he thought it was just a passing star or another ship, but the light grew larger and larger, quickly turning into a glowing shape in the distance. Ryan looked up, his heart racing. Something wasn't right. The light soon became a craft, an alien ship, landing smoothly just outside his workshop. The ship was sleek and beautiful, glowing softly with colors Ryan had never seen before. His breath caught in his throat. This was no ordinary spaceship. It was something from another world. The ship's hatch opened with a soft hiss. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest as a figure stepped out. A woman. She was tall, with pale blue skin that shimmered like the moonlight, and her long silver hair flowed behind her like a silken curtain. Her eyes, bright and clear, seemed to glow with an inner light. She stood there for a moment, looking directly at Ryan, her gaze filled with determination. Ryan stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do. He had heard stories of alien visitors, but never had he imagined meeting one face to face. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. She stepped closer, her feet making no sound as she walked. "I've been looking for you," she said, her voice calm but filled with a sense of urgency. "I left my planet to find you." Ryan blinked, his mind struggling to process her words. What do you mean?" he stammered. He didn't know whether to be frightened or amazed. His mind raced, trying to find an explanation. Was this a dream? Was he imagining things? The woman smiled softly, as if she knew exactly what he was thinking. "I know you have questions," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "And I have answers. But first, I need you to trust me." Ryan shook his head, trying to clear the fog in his brain. "Trust you? I don't even know who you are." "I am Lyra," she replied. "And I've traveled across the galaxy to find you. I've left my entire world behind, all to seek you out. You are the one I've been looking for." Her words made Ryan feel uneasy, but something deep inside him stirred. There was something in her eyes, a mix of hope and desperation, that made him feel connected to her, even though he didn't understand why. "Why me?" Ryan finally asked, his voice still shaky. "What do you want with me?" Lyra looked at him with a serious expression. "It's not what I want, Ryan. It's what the galaxy needs. You and I are connected in ways you cannot yet understand. I'm here because you have a part to play in the future of my world. And perhaps even more." Ryan couldn't believe what he was hearing. He took a step back, unsure of how to respond. Was she serious? What part could he possibly play in saving her world? Lyra seemed to sense his doubt. She stepped forward and extended her hand, offering him a chance to learn more, to understand. "I know this is a lot to take in, but I promise you, everything will become clear. I need your help, Ryan. Will you come with me?" Ryan stood still for a moment, staring at her hand. The air around him felt heavy with the weight of her words. Was this the adventure he had always wondered about? Was this his chance to step into a story far greater than anything he had imagined? With a deep breath, Ryan nodded. "Okay, I'll go with you." Lyra smiled, and for the first time, Ryan felt as though he was standing on the edge of something extraordinary. He didn't know what awaited him, but he was about to find out. And somehow, he felt like his life was about to change forever. Ryan stood in front of Lyra, still unsure of what to think. The spaceship behind her hummed quietly, its lights flickering softly in the growing darkness. He could feel the cool evening breeze on his skin, but it didn't seem to matter. His mind was racing with questions. "Come with me," Lyra said, her voice calm yet filled with urgency. Without waiting for Ryan to respond, she turned and began walking toward her ship. Ryan hesitated for only a moment before following her. Something about her presence, something he couldn't explain, made him feel like this was all meant to happen. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was unlike anything Ryan had ever imagined. The walls were smooth and metallic, yet soft in some places, almost like they were alive. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the edges, and the air smelled fresh, like rain after a long dry spell. The ship wasn't large, but it felt vast, as though it stretched on forever. Ryan felt a sudden sense of awe as he looked around. Lyra guided him to a small room near the center of the ship. There, a holographic display flickered to life in front of them. A map of stars and planets appeared, showing Ryan parts of the galaxy he had never seen before. It was a sight he couldn't comprehend. "I know this is a lot to take in," Lyra began, turning to face him. Her expression was serious but soft. "But there's something important you need to understand. The reason I came to find you." Ryan crossed his arms, still trying to grasp what was happening. "You said I'm connected to your world. But how? I'm just a mechanic. I fix things on this small colony. What could I possibly have to do with your world?" Lyra nodded slowly, as if she had been expecting him to ask. "You're more than just a mechanic, Ryan. You're people. Earth. There's something unique about your race. Your ingenuity, your ability to adapt, to create. These are things my people have been searching for. And the prophecy speaks of a human who will be the key to saving us." Ryan frowned, still confused. "A prophecy? You mean like a story or something?" Lyra smiled gently. "Not a story. A prophecy. It's been passed down through my people for generations. It's about the coming of a human, someone from Earth, who will help us solve a problem that has plagued us for centuries. We've been on the brink of extinction because of a war we've been losing for so long. But the prophecy says that a human will help us find a solution, a way to end this war and bring peace." Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. "Wait a second. You're telling me that I'm supposed to help you end a war? How? I don't even know where to start." Lyra's expression softened. "I didn't know how either. But the prophecy said that the human would have a special connection with one of us, and that the bond between us would unlock the way forward. When I saw you, when I felt the pull to come here, I knew that you were the one the prophecy spoke of." Ryan's mind was spinning. He had always lived an ordinary life, away from any kind of drama or excitement. Now, here he was, sitting in an alien spaceship, listening to a woman from another world, telling him he was part of a prophecy that could end a war. It didn't feel real. "But why me?" Ryan asked. "Why not someone else? Why not someone from your world?" Lyra's eyes sparkled with a mix of sadness and determination. "My people. We've tried everything. We've fought for years, but nothing works. We're trapped. But humans, you are different. You think in ways we don't. You see solutions where we only see problems. You're strong in ways we cannot understand. I came because I believe you can help us. The prophecy doesn't explain exactly how, but I know you're the one who can make the difference." Ryan took a deep breath. He had no idea what he was getting into, but something in Lyra's voice made him believe her. He had never felt more unsure of himself in his life, but at the same time, a strange excitement started to grow within him. Maybe this was his purpose. Maybe this was the adventure he had always been waiting for. "All right," Ryan said, his voice steady but filled with doubt. "I don't understand it all, but I'll help you. I don't know how, but if you think I'm the one who can help end your war, then I'll try." Lyra's face softened with relief, and she stepped closer to him. "Thank you, Ryan. I promise you, this journey will be difficult, but together we can find a way to save both our worlds." Ryan nodded, still unsure of what lay ahead, but determined to see this through. As Lyra led him deeper into the ship, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed forever. In this part, Lyra explains the prophecy and why Ryan is important to her world's survival, building a deeper connection between them and raising more questions for Ryan. Ryan sat quietly in the small, dimly lit room of Lyra's ship. His mind was still trying to catch up with everything she had told him. A prophecy. A war that had lasted for centuries. He had never imagined his life could be tied to something so grand. Lyra was standing by a control panel, her fingers moving over the holographic displays. She looked calm, but Ryan could sense the weight of everything on her shoulders. He wondered how long she had been carrying this burden, searching for him, trying to find the one who could help save her world. "What exactly is this prophecy you're talking about?" Ryan asked, his voice a little shaky. "And how am I supposed to help?" Lyra turned to face him, her expression serious but full of hope. "The prophecy doesn't give us all the answers, but it speaks of a human who will come from Earth, someone with the power to end the war that has torn my people apart. The human will bring about change, using abilities my people don't fully understand." Ryan frowned. "I don't understand. I'm just a mechanic. How could someone like me have the power to end a war?" Lyra's gaze softened. "It's not about power in the way you think. Your people, Earthlings, are resourceful, clever. You solve problems in ways my people can't even imagine. My people are warriors, used to fighting, but we've been fighting for so long that we've lost sight of the solutions. We've become trapped in endless battles. But you, Ryan, you see the world differently. The prophecy says that this human, this person from Earth, will be the key to finding the answers." Ryan shook his head, feeling more confused than ever. "But why me? Why not someone else?" Lyra walked closer to him, her eyes filled with understanding. "I can't explain it exactly, but when I found you, when I felt that connection, I knew. There's something in you, something special. The prophecy speaks of a bond between the human and one of my people. It's said that this bond will unlock a way to solve the war. It doesn't make sense, I know, but I feel it. You're the one, Ryan." Ryan sat back, trying to wrap his mind around everything. He had always thought of himself as an ordinary person, someone who lived a simple life. He never imagined he could be the answer to something so important. But Lyra seemed so certain, and there was something in her eyes, something that made him feel like she was telling the truth. "You really believe that I can help?" he asked quietly. Lyra nodded. "I do. I've seen it in the way you think, the way you approach problems. Your ability to fix things, to understand how things work, it's what we need. We've tried every way we know to end this war, but nothing has worked. The prophecy says that a human will show us the way. I believe that human is you." Ryan's mind was still racing. He was just a mechanic. He wasn't a soldier or a leader. He had no experience with war or politics. But there was something in Lyra's words, something that made him feel like he had no choice but to try. "So, what now?" Ryan asked. "How do we begin?" Lyra smiled, a small but genuine smile. "We start by learning more about each other. The prophecy didn't just speak of the human. There's a connection between us, a bond that has to be formed. Only then can we begin to understand what comes next." Ryan wasn't sure what Lyra meant, but he was willing to follow her. They had already made it this far, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was meant to be part of whatever came next. As they traveled deeper into the ship, Lyra showed him more about her world. She shared stories of her people, their struggles and their hopes. She explained how the war had begun, how it had started with a simple disagreement, but had escalated into something much larger and more dangerous. Ryan listened carefully, trying to understand everything. He could see the pain in Lyra's eyes as she spoke, and it made him want to help even more. "We'll find a way," Ryan said finally, his voice filled with determination. "I don't know how, but I'll do whatever it takes." Lyra turned to him, her eyes bright with gratitude. "Thank you, Ryan. I knew you were the one who could help us. Together, we'll find the solution." Ryan nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility settle on his shoulders. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he felt like he was part of something much bigger than himself. He had always wondered if there was more to life than just fixing machines, and now, it seemed he was about to find out. In this part, Ryan begins to understand the true significance of the prophecy and the connection between him and Lyra. Their bond starts to take shape, and Ryan makes the decision to help her, despite his doubts. The story builds toward the challenges they will face together. The days passed quickly as Ryan traveled with Lyra. They moved through the stars, leaving the colony far behind. The ship was unlike anything Ryan had ever seen before. It was sleek, with walls that seemed to pulse with energy. The technology was advanced, far beyond anything humans had developed. Yet it felt strangely comfortable, like it belonged in the vastness of space. Every day, Lyra shared more about her world, her people, and the history of the war that had torn them apart. She explained the political tensions, the leaders who had failed, and the factions that fought endlessly. Ryan listened carefully, trying to understand everything. He had never been interested in politics or war, but this was different. This was something bigger than he had ever imagined. As they spent more time together, Ryan noticed something else, something that made him feel more connected to Lyra. It wasn't just the prophecy or the war. It was the way she looked at him, as though he were the answer to everything she had been searching for. Her presence was both comforting and unsettling, but the connection between them grew stronger every day. Lyra, too, seemed to feel it. There were moments when their eyes met, and without saying a word, they both understood. It was as if something invisible tied them together, something deeper than just their words. Ryan couldn't explain it, but he didn't need to. He felt it too. One evening, as they sat together in the ship's lounge, watching the stars outside the window, Lyra spoke quietly. "Ryan, I've traveled across the galaxy, searching for you. I've been to countless worlds, met many people, but I never felt the way I feel with you." Her voice was soft, but there was a raw honesty in it that made Ryan's heart skip a beat. Ryan didn't know how to respond. The words he wanted to say were stuck in his throat. He had never been good with emotions, especially when it came to matters of the heart. But in that moment, he realized just how much his life had changed. He had gone from being the simple mechanic on a quiet colony to standing on the edge of a war that could change everything. And all of it started with Lyra. "I don't know what this is," Ryan said, his voice unsteady, "but I feel it too. I feel like I'm supposed to be here with you, helping you." Lyra smiled, a gentle smile that reached her eyes. "That's because you are. You're more than just someone who can help with the war, Ryan. You're someone who gives me hope. I didn't think there was hope left for us. But then I found you. I didn't expect to feel this way, but I can't deny it." Ryan looked out at the stars, his mind racing. This was a journey he never expected to be on. He had come to space to fix things, to make small repairs, and live a simple life. But now, he was part of something much bigger, a mission that could save a world. And in the process, he was starting to care for Lyra in a way he had never thought possible. Over the next few days, their bond deepened. They spent hours talking, learning from each other, sharing stories of their worlds. Lyra told Ryan about the traditions of her people, their celebrations, and their struggles. Ryan shared stories of Earth, of the things he missed, like the taste of his favorite foods, the smell of rain, and the feeling of being surrounded by loved ones. There were times when they would sit in comfortable silence, simply enjoying each other's company. Ryan began to realize how much he looked forward to these moments, how much he valued the time they spent together. Lyra had become more than just an ally in a war. She had become someone he couldn't imagine being without. But despite their growing connection, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. He was still uncertain about what he could do to help her people. He wasn't a warrior or a leader. He was just a mechanic. But Lyra believed in him, and for that, He felt a sense of responsibility he had never known before. One night, as the ship passed through a cloud of stars, Lyra spoke again, her voice softer this time. "Ryan, I need to ask you something important." "What is it?" he asked, turning to face her. "If we succeed," Lyra said, her eyes meeting his, "if we end the war, if we find peace, what will happen to us? To this connection we have." She paused, searching his face for an answer. Ryan took a deep breath. He didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, he knew one thing for sure. He didn't want to let her go. "I don't know what's going to happen," Ryan replied honestly. "But I do know that I don't want to lose this, whatever it is that we have." Lyra's eyes softened, and she nodded. "Neither do I." And in that quiet moment, under the stars, their bond was solidified, a promise to face whatever came next, together. Ryan stood by the window of the ship, looking out at the stars as they sped through the galaxy. His mind was still trying to process everything he had learned over the past few weeks. Lyra had shared her people's struggles, their history, and the prophecy that had brought him here. He still didn't fully understand how he was supposed to help, but he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't turn back now. Lyra entered the room quietly, her footsteps soft against the metal floor. Ryan turned to face her, sensing something was different in her posture. She looked more tense than usual, her face shadowed with concern. "Lyra, what's wrong?" Ryan asked, his voice full of worry. He could feel the change in the atmosphere around her. She had always been calm and collected, but today there was something more urgent in her eyes. Lyra took a deep breath, glancing out at the stars. "We've been discovered," she said, her voice tight. "The enemies of my people have found out about me, and about you." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "Who knows? The factions that have been fighting against us for years," Lyra explained, her eyes narrowing with anger. "They learned about the prophecy. They know that a human is involved in our cause now, and they will stop at nothing to prevent us from succeeding." Ryan felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He had known the stakes were high, but hearing it put so plainly made everything feel much more real. "So, they're coming after us?" "Yes," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the fear that Ryan could see in her eyes. "They'll send their best soldiers, their spies, anyone they can to stop me from reaching my homeworld. They know that if we succeed, their power will be broken." Ryan could feel the weight of her words. His thoughts raced. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't trained for combat. He was just a mechanic. But as he looked at Lyra, he knew there was no turning back. This wasn't just about fixing things anymore. It was about something much bigger, about helping her save her people and their future. "What do we do?" Ryan asked, his voice more certain than he felt. Lyra hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "We need to move quickly. We can't afford to waste time. We have to reach my homeworld before they do. The longer we wait, the more dangerous it will become." Ryan nodded, his resolve growing stronger. He knew that whatever came next, he had to stand by Lyra's side. She had believed in him from the start, and he wasn't about to let her down now. Lyra turned to the ship's controls and began to work quickly, her fingers moving over the holographic display. "I've rerouted the ship's power to the engines. We'll be able to travel faster now, but it will make us vulnerable. If they're tracking us, they'll know where we're headed." Ryan felt his stomach tighten. "So we'll have to be careful." "Yes," Lyra said, her voice calm, but with a hint of worry. "We'll have to use stealth. If they catch up to us, we won't have much of a chance. They have better weapons, better technology. We can't fight them head-on." Ryan's heart raced as he realized the gravity of their situation. "But we can outrun them, right? If we push the ship hard enough." Lyra's eyes met his, and for a moment, he saw the weight of her responsibility in her gaze. "We can try, but it's risky. We may not have the advantage for long." The silence in the room felt heavy as Ryan thought about the dangers ahead. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he knew one thing. He was ready to face whatever challenges came their way. He wasn't just here to help Lyra now. He was here because he cared about her, because he had become part of her world, and she was part of his. "I'll do whatever it takes," Ryan said, his voice firm. "Let's get to your homeworld, Lyra. We can do this." Lyra gave him a small but appreciative smile. "Thank you, Ryan. You don't know how much this means to me." Ryan nodded, feeling the weight of the journey ahead. There was no turning back now. They had to reach her homeworld before the enemies could stop them, and whatever dangers awaited them, they would face together. As the ship raced through the stars, Ryan looked out at the endless space ahead of them. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that with Lyra by his side, he wasn't alone. And for the first time, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. In this part, the threat of Lyra's enemies becomes real, and the urgency of their mission increases. Ryan is forced to face the danger they are in and prepare for the challenges ahead, strengthening his commitment to Lyra and the mission. The ship was moving faster now, the stars outside a blur of light, as Lyra pushed the engines to their limits. Ryan could feel the tension in the air. They were racing against time, against enemies who were determined to stop them. Every moment brought them closer to danger, but also closer to the unknown future they were fighting for. Lyra's hands flew across the control panel, adjusting settings and making quick decisions. Ryan had never seen her so focused, so determined. He knew how much this meant to her, and how much it meant to him too. He had come to care for her deeply, and the thought of losing her was unbearable. But the stakes were higher than their personal feelings now. The fate of her people, and possibly his own, rested on their success. "Lyra, how much longer?" Ryan asked, his voice filled with concern. "We're almost there," she replied without looking up, her voice steady but tight with pressure. "But we have to be careful. The enemy is closing in. We've already detected some ships on our tail. We need to lose them before we reach the planet." Ryan swallowed hard. "How do we do that?" Lyra glanced at him, her eyes flashing with a mix of determination and worry. "We'll have to take a dangerous path through an asteroid field. It's risky, but it's the only way to shake them off." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. An asteroid field. That sounded like a nightmare. He had no idea how a ship like this would handle such a dangerous course, but he trusted Lyra. She knew what she was doing. He had to believe that. "I'll be ready," Ryan said, trying to keep his voice steady. He wasn't sure how he could help, but he was willing to do whatever it took. Lyra nodded, giving him a brief, encouraging smile. "I know you will. Stay close to me, and don't take your eyes off the controls." The asteroid field loomed ahead, a chaotic mass of rocks and debris floating in space. The sight of it made Ryan's stomach twist. He had never imagined he would be flying through something like this, let alone be part of a mission to save an entire world. As Lyra guided the ship into the field, Ryan could feel the shift in the ship's motion. It jolted and swerved as they dodged rocks of all sizes, some small, some as large as buildings. The ship shook with each near miss, the tension rising with every second. Ryan gripped the seat, his knuckles white. The noise of the ship's engines filled his ears, but the silence in his mind was deafening. His heart pounded in his chest as he watched Lyra, her focus unwavering as she navigated through the field. "Steady, steady," Lyra muttered to herself, her fingers moving quickly across the controls. Ryan could see the beads of sweat on her forehead, the strain in her expression. This wasn't just about reaching her homeworld anymore. It was about surviving, about making it through the danger that surrounded them at every turn. Just as Ryan thought they might be in the clear, a loud warning blared from the ship's system. He looked up to see several enemy ships closing in on them. They had found them. "They're catching up," Ryan shouted. Lyra's face tightened, and she pushed the ship harder, maneuvering through the asteroid field with expert precision. The enemy ships fired at them, their blasts narrowly missing. Ryan could feel the heat from the explosions as they passed by. We need to get out of here. Now, Lyra shouted, her voice tinged with desperation. With a final surge of power, Lyra pulled the ship into a sharp turn, narrowly avoiding a massive asteroid that had appeared out of nowhere. The ship groaned as it struggled to keep up. But Lyra wasn't giving up. She was determined to make it to her homeworld, no matter the cost. Ryan's heart raced as the ship shot out of the asteroid field and into open space. The enemy ships were far behind now, their fire growing weaker as they lost sight of their target. Ryan let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. They had made it. We did it. Ryan breathed, a feeling of relief washing over him. Lyra didn't relax, though. She kept her eyes fixed on the stars ahead. It's not over yet, but we've bought ourselves some time. Ryan nodded. He knew Lyra was right. They had escaped one danger, but there would be many more waiting for them before they reached her homeworld. But in that moment, with the ship gliding through the emptiness of space, Ryan felt a sense of accomplishment. They had faced the ultimate test and survived. They were still alive, still together, and still moving forward. As they continued on their path, Ryan couldn't help but wonder what awaited them on the other side. Would they be able to stop the war and save Lyra's people? He didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear. He wasn't backing down. Whatever came next, he would face it with Lyra. Together, Ryan sat in the small cabin of the ship, staring out at the vast emptiness of space. It had been days since they escaped the asteroid field, but the tension had never really gone away. Lyra had kept the ship at full speed, pushing it to the limits as they raced toward her homeworld. Yet, despite the progress, there was always a feeling of unease, like something was waiting for them on the other side. Lyra had been quieter lately, her usual confidence replaced by a sense of determination that bordered on desperation. Ryan knew that the closer they got to her world, the more danger they would face. She had warned him that the final confrontation wouldn't be easy. They were heading into enemy territory, and the factions that had been hunting them wouldn't stop until they had her, until they had both of them. "You okay?" Ryan asked, breaking the silence. He looked over at Lyra, who was standing at the controls, her eyes scanning the stars ahead. Lyra didn't look at him right away. She seemed lost in thought, her fingers tapping gently on the ship's control panel. Finally, she turned to him, her expression hard but weary. "I'm fine," she said, her voice steady but carrying a weight Ryan could feel in his bones. "We're almost there. I'm thinking about what happens when we get there." Ryan stood up and walked over to her. "What do you mean?" Lyra hesitated for a moment, then spoke, her eyes meeting his. "If we succeed, if we manage to bring the factions together, it could save my people. But there's a price. There always is." She paused, her gaze distant. "I may have to make a choice, one that could change everything. I might have to give up my place, my title, my position in order to lead in a way that truly brings peace. If that happens, I can't promise what my future will look like." Ryan felt a pang of sadness. He had seen how much Lyra cared about her people, how much responsibility she carried. She had dedicated her life to ending the war, to saving her world. And now she was telling him that everything she had worked for might come at a cost. "I don't understand," Ryan said softly. "You've worked so hard to bring peace. Why should you have to give up everything?" Lyra sighed, her fingers brushing over the controls absently. "Sometimes the person who leads must make the hardest choices. I might have to step away from everything I've known to bring my people together. It's the only way to break the cycle of war. But I don't know if I'm ready to make that sacrifice." Ryan stepped closer to her, his voice firm. "You don't have to do it alone. We're in this together, Lyra. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out." She looked at him, her eyes softening. "I know you're right, but there's more to this than just us. The future of my people depends on the choices we make, and I can't afford to be selfish." Ryan nodded, understanding the weight she was carrying. But he also knew that the choices weren't just hers to make. They were in this together. They always had been. We'll face whatever comes next, together, Ryan said, his voice full of certainty. I'm with you, Lyra, and I'm not going anywhere. Lyra smiled, a small but genuine smile that warmed Ryan's heart. Thank you, Ryan. You don't know how much that means to me. Just as Ryan was about to speak again, an alarm blared from the ship's console. Both of them froze. The warning light flashed red, signaling an incoming attack. Lyra's face immediately hardened, and she rushed to the controls. We're here, she said, her voice sharp. The enemy has caught up to us. Ryan's heart raced. This was it. They had made it this far, but now they were about to face the final test. The enemy ships were closing in fast, their weapons powering up. We have to make it through, Lyra said, her eyes filled with determination. We can't afford to fail now. Ryan grabbed onto the nearest support bar, feeling the weight of what was ahead. This was their moment. It was do or die. Lyra pulled the ship into a sharp turn, her hands moving quickly over the controls. The ship groaned under the strain, but it held together as they dodged the first wave of enemy fire. Ryan could feel the tension in the air, the weight of their mission hanging over them. There was no turning back now. As the enemy ships closed in, Ryan made a choice. He had come here for Lyra, for her people, and for the chance to make a difference. No matter what happened, he wasn't going to let her down. We can do this, Ryan said, his voice steady. Together. With that, Lyra pushed the ship to its limits, preparing for the battle ahead. In this part, the tension builds as Ryan and Lyra prepare to confront the enemies closing in on them. Lyra faces a difficult decision about her future, but with Ryan's support, they make their way toward the final challenge. The theme of sacrifice and choosing what's right comes to the forefront as they brace for the danger ahead. The enemy ships, sleek and powerful, were closing in fast. The space around Ryan and Lyra's ship was filled with a bright flash of laser fire, and the hum of their engines was drowned out by the deafening roar of weapons colliding. Lyra's hands moved quickly across the controls, steering the ship in tight circles to dodge the incoming blasts. Ryan gripped the nearest support bar, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never been in a real battle before. He was a mechanic, not a soldier. But as the ship shook with every near miss, he realized that his role in this was far bigger than he had ever imagined. His world and Lyra's were on the line. We have to hold on. Lyra's voice came through the communication system, steady but filled with urgency. We need to get through their defenses and reach the surface. Once we land, we can make our stand. Ryan nodded, even though he knew she couldn't see him. He had no idea how he could help, but he couldn't let her down. He wasn't just here to fix things anymore. He was here to fight, to be a part of something bigger than himself. The enemy ships fired again, their lasers cutting through space like knives. Lyra swerved the ship just in time, but the blast grazed the side of their ship, sending a shudder through the entire vessel. Alarms blared, and warning lights flashed across the control panel. Damn it, Lyra muttered, her fingers flying over the controls. We've lost power to the shields. We need to fix this fast, or we won't make it. Ryan's eyes widened. What can I do? Get to the engine room, Lyra ordered. We need to stabilize the power flow. I can't keep this up without shields. Hurry. Ryan didn't hesitate. He rushed through the ship's narrow halls, moving quickly but carefully as the ship rocked with every blast. He reached the engine room in record time and knelt by the panel, his mind working quickly. He had repaired ships many times, but nothing like this. His hand shook slightly as he worked, but he focused all his energy on the task. There was no room for mistakes now. As Ryan worked, Lyra's voice came through the intercom. We're almost there, Ryan. Just hold on. I'm on it, Ryan muttered, not looking up from the panel. He connected the wires, realigned the circuits, and rerouted the power. Every second felt like an eternity, but slowly the system began to stabilize. The ship's power returned, and the shields flickered back to life. Ryan let out a breath of relief. Shields are back online. Good work. Lyra's voice crackled with approval. We've got one more jump to make. Hang on. Ryan quickly made his way back to the cockpit, where Lyra was still steering the ship through the storm of enemy fire. He could see the enemy ships closing in, their weapons powered up and ready to fire. We can't outrun them anymore, Lyra said, her voice grim. We have to take them down. Are you ready? Ryan didn't have a choice. They had come too far to back down now. Ready. Lyra's fingers moved quickly, switching the ship's systems over to weapons. We've got one shot at this. Let's make it count. With a deep breath, Ryan took a seat beside her, his heart racing. He had no experience in combat, but he knew how to follow orders. Together, they focused on the enemy ships, their targeting systems locking in. Lyra fired first. The blast from their ship's cannons hit the closest enemy vessel, shaking it violently. It was enough to make the enemy ship veer off course, but it wasn't enough to take it down. Ryan's hands were sweating as he washed. This was their only chance. Again. Lyra fired again, this time hitting the enemy ship's engines. The ship exploded in a burst of light, debris scattering in all directions. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. One down, but there were still more to go. Just a few more, Lyra said, her voice calm but with a fierce edge. She was focused, determined. Ryan could see it in her eyes. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for hope. The next few minutes were a blur of movement and flashes of light. Ryan and Lyra worked together seamlessly, each shot landing with precision. The enemy ships were no match for their combined effort. One by one, the enemy vessels were destroyed, their weapons silenced. Finally, there was nothing left but empty space. We did it, Ryan breathed, a sense of disbelief washing over him. They had won. Against all odds, they had made it through. Lyra didn't say anything at first. She just sat there, her eyes on the stars ahead. We've only just begun, she said softly. Ryan looked at her, seeing the weight of everything in her expression. He knew there was still much more to do. But for now, they had won a victory. They had taken the first step toward bringing peace to her world. The battle had ended, but the war was far from over. Ryan and Lyra's ship floated in the silent space, the wreckage of the enemy ships scattered in their wake. The stars outside were peaceful, but the tension between them was thick. They had fought hard, and they had won, but the hardest part was yet to come. Lyra sat at the controls, her face tired but resolute. She had led them through the most dangerous part of their journey, but she knew this was just the beginning. She glanced over at Ryan, who was sitting in the seat next to her, his face worn but determined. They had come a long way together, and she could feel the bond between them growing stronger with each passing day. We made it, Ryan said quietly, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. But what now? What happens next? Lyra turned her eyes toward the planet ahead of them, her homeworld. Now we face the hardest part, she said. We have to go down to the surface and unite my people. It won't be easy. There are still factions that want to keep the war going, and they'll do anything to stop us. Ryan nodded, his mind racing. He had never imagined that his life would end up like this. A mechanic from a quiet colony, now part of something bigger than he could have ever dreamed. But he wasn't just here because of the prophecy anymore. He was here for Lyra, for her people, and for the future they could create together. Lyra looked at him, her eyes softening. Ryan, I don't know what will happen when we land. The factions will be waiting for us. They won't make it easy. I might have to give up everything I've known in order to lead my people toward peace. Ryan reached out and placed a hand on hers. You don't have to do it alone. You've already shown me what it means to fight for something greater than yourself. I'm with you. Whatever happens, I'll be by your side. Lyra's gaze softened, and for a moment, the weight of everything they had been through seemed to melt away. She smiled, a small but genuine smile, and squeezed his hand. "Thank you, Ryan. You've become more than just a part of this mission. You've become a part of my life, and I can't thank you enough for that." Ryan smiled back, his heart swelling with feelings he couldn't explain. He had come to care for Lyra in ways he never thought possible. He had come to love her, this woman from another world who had turned his life upside down. "We've come this far," Ryan said, his voice steady with determination. "We'll face whatever comes next, together." The ship began its descent, the planet below growing larger with each passing second. Lyra steered the ship toward the planet's surface, her eyes focused. The ground was coming into view, and soon they would be face to face with the factions that had torn her world apart. But Lyra knew, deep down, that this was the moment that could change everything. They had a chance, together, to bring peace to her world. As the ship touched down, the air was thick with tension. Lyra took a deep breath before turning to Ryan one last time. "Are you ready?" she asked. Ryan looked out at the planet below, at the uncertain future ahead. He wasn't sure what to expect. He didn't know how this story would end, but one thing was clear. He was ready to fight for it. For her. For the future they could build. "I'm ready," Ryan said, his voice filled with resolve. "Let's do this." Together, they stood up and walked toward the hatch. The door opened with a soft hiss, revealing the unknown world outside. The ground was rocky and barren, a stark reminder of the war that had ravaged this land. But there was hope in the air, hope for a future where peace could finally be achieved. As they stepped onto the planet, Lyra turned to Ryan with a look of gratitude and determination in her eyes. "No matter what happens here, we've made it this far. We've fought for something greater than ourselves, and that's what matters." Ryan smiled at her. "We've come a long way, and we're not stopping now." Together, they walked into the future, ready to face whatever came next. The road ahead would be difficult, and there would be many obstacles. But for the first time, Ryan felt that everything they had fought for was worth it. They had each other, and they had hope. And with that, they were ready for whatever the future held. In this final part, Ryan and Lyra faced the consequences of their actions as they arrived on her homeworld, preparing for the difficult task of uniting her people. Their bond has grown stronger, and they are ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. The story concludes with a sense of hope and a new beginning, as they step into the unknown future together.